Name a character from a book. Now think about that character. Now, with that character, I want you to try to remember things about them. Remember anything that you can about them. Yeah, so those type of things that you can remember about your character, those are details about that character that probably had some sort of help, um, or were probably helped along or helped the story along in some way, or made you feel like you know them, like you know how they might act in a situation, or you know anything about them. Now, these details are extremely important for your story, and for any story for that matter. Knowing a character is kind of what makes a story, right? So today, what we're going to do is we're going to develop a character for your story. So we're going to come up with a character for your story and work with details about them that might be important to your story or useful to your story, um, in order to help the story move along and be enjoyable to read for your reader. Our objective today, so our I can statement, is that I can introduce a character and describe important details about them. So today, I have a funny book for us to read. I found it. I like it. I think it's kind of funny. Now, while I'm going to read this book to you, and we haven't read it before, so we're going to read through the whole book. Should only take us like 4 minutes or so. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to pay attention to how to anything about the character that you can remember, and possibly about how that character is introduced to us in the story, right? So this book only has. I'll give you a hint. I'll give you a hint. All right. This book only has one character, so it should be pretty easy to catch the details and possibly when that character gets introduced. Now, quick question before you get started, or before we get started reading the book, because that's what we're doing. We're reading the book. Does a character typically get introduced at the end of a book, at the beginning of the book, or maybe in the middle of the book? Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, definitely. Right at the beginning, right? So typically near the beginning of the book is when you're going to get introduced to characters, and really get to know them. Might happen more at the beginning of a book. Yeah, so might be something to pay attention to while we're reading the book. Something to keep in your brain, right? Yeah. All right, let's read. I'm a bad seed. A bad seed. Oh, yeah, that's true. The other seeds, they look at me and they say, "Oh, that seed is so bad." When they think I'm not listening, they mumble, "There goes a bad seed." But I can hear them. I have good hearing for a bad seed. How bad am I? You really want to know? Well, I never put things back where they belong. I'm late to everything. I tell long jokes with no punchlines. I never wash my hands or my feet. I lie about pointless stuff. And I cut in line every time. I stare at everybody. I glare at everybody. I finish everybody's sentences, and I never listen. And I do lots of other bad things too. Know why? Because I'm a bad seed. A bad seed. I just can't help it. Sure, I wasn't always this bad. I was born a humble seed on a simple sunflower in an unremarkable field. I had a big family, seeds everywhere. We found ways of having fun. We were close. But then the petals dropped, and our flower drooped. It's kind of a blur. I remember the bag. Everything went dark. And then, a giant! I thought I was a goner. I thought I was done for. I screamed and I hollered. But I was spit out at the last possible second. I flew through the air and I landed under the bleachers with a huge thud. And when I woke up, it was dark outside. A wad of gum had softened my fall. I felt okay, but something had changed in me. I'd become a different seed entirely. I had become a bad seed. A bad seed. That's right. I stopped smiling. I kept to myself. I drifted. I was a friend to nobody and bad to everybody. I was lost on purpose. I lived inside of a soda can. I didn't care, and it suited me. Until recently. I've made a big decision. I've decided I don't want to be a bad seed anymore. I'm ready to be happy. It's hard to be good when you're so used to being bad. But I'm trying. I'm taking it one day at a time. Sure, I still forget to listen, and I'll still show up late, and I still talk during movies, and I do all sorts of other bad stuff. But I also say thank you, and I say please, and I smile, and I hold doors open for people. Not always, but sometimes. And even though I feel bad sometimes, I also feel kind of good. It's sort of a mix. All I can do is keep trying and keep thinking. Maybe I'm not such a bad seed after all. Hey, look, there goes a bad seed. Well, he's actually not all that bad anymore. I heard that. The end. So, did anyone catch where the character, the bad seed, was introduced in this book? Yeah, that's totally right. Yep, right at the beginning, right? I'm a bad seed was the first couple of words inside that book. So, what other information did we learn about the seed, or about the main character? Do we know his name? No, we don't know his name, do we? Right? Let's look through. Nope, don't know his name. Looked through the entire book, couldn't find it. I guess he doesn't have a name. His name is just the bad seed, right? Yeah, there was that whole page, right? So the whole page talking about why he's a bad seed, what he does that are things that are bad that bad seeds do, right? So all of those are different details about him, right? He doesn't put things away. He's always late. He's he glares and he stares at people, right? Those are all really important details. Good eye, right? Yeah, nice job. Right? And he never washes his hands. Gross. Disgusting. Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of detail. It's all right here on this page. Side note for the video. This video, I actually have this book on my computer, and so I don't actually have the physical book to show you, but I would be flipping through the pages. So, end aside. Does anyone know where our story actually started? Or maybe what it was about? Yeah, so our story started when we found out that, where he was coming from, what made him into a bad seed. That was kind of part of the story, right? Yeah, so did you guys think that knowing that, how bad he was important to the story in any way? Why was knowing that he was bad important to the story? Yeah, if we didn't, I mean, yeah, that's kind of right. Yeah. So if we didn't know that he was as bad as he was, right? It wouldn't really make a difference that he was now holding the door for someone. Right? So it was important for us to know how bad he was. It was important for us to have those details in order to, when we got to the point where he started to change, when his character started to evolve, right? We understood that it was different, that he was different than he normally was. And if we didn't know that he was late to everything, or, probably never held the door for anyone before, when he started to change, it was really important that he was holding the door. That was a big step for him. Yeah. So the details that we learn about our story or about our characters really typically drive where the story is going to go, right? So now that's not a rule. I mean, there's no like you could have a story where the characters are kind of the same and different things happen to them. That's how a lot of adventure stories are. But typically there's some sort of character trait that changes. And we'll get to that later. Right now, what we're going to do is we're going to really focus on coming up with some character details. So what we've been talking about this whole time, different character details, coming up with them, using them in our story, deciding on how we might want to use them in the story. All right, so now that we've done all this talking about character details and we've kind of looked at the story about a seed that was bad and with a lot of different details, what we're going to do now is you guys are going to practice kind of coming up with some character traits for a character that you're going to put into a story later. Um, there's a lot of different things that you could use for your character, and I have these two pieces of paper for you. Aside, I would then pass out the pieces of paper because, how else are they going to get a piece of paper? Um, and I'll show them up here on the screen right here. So that character chart, the character trait chart, that should really help you come up with some ideas if you're struggling to come up with some traits for your character, some different details about your character. And then the organizer that I gave you, that's going to really help. I mean, you might have way more traits than just three, right? So three traits, sure. I mean, that's quite a few. That might be sufficient. You might need more. I would say we want to shoot for at least three traits. If you can't come up with one, just keep thinking. Think about anything. Anything. Put your character into different situations, and think about how they might react. That'll probably give you a good idea of another character trait that you might be able to use. So I'm going to let you guys have a little bit of time here, take about 5 minutes, and really come up with a few different traits, and at least for your main character. Um, yeah, go for it. So, guys, I've been coming around and looking at some of your characters, and I'm really enjoying a lot of the details that you guys are coming up with for your characters. Now, I want you to begin to think about how those details play into your story. How are you going to use those? So, in the story that we read, right, the character was bad, and then he turned good by trying to be nice every once in a while, hold the door for people. How is your character going to change, or how does your character traits that you came up with um, kind of dictate your story? So how does it make the story keep going? Now, so you might need to think about your story a little bit more about how you're going to introduce them. Whether they're going to get introduced right away, like the story that we read, or whether it's going to take a little bit of time. You're going to need a little bit of backstory before you introduce your main character. That's a possibility too. I encourage you, come up here. There's a bunch of books up here. So did we say that the characters typically get introduced at the end of the book, right? No, of course not. At the beginning of the book. So feel free to come up here. Take a look at some of these other books. Try to figure out how these other books might introduce their characters. Just do some research, right, on how these characters how the characters in the books are introduced. And while you're doing that, I want you to be thinking about your own stories that you're going to tell. And by the end of the day, what you're going to have is you're going to have that character trait sheet. And if you need to change some traits, if you decided, you know what, I don't really like that trait, that's totally fine. Switch it out. But what I want you to do is that by the end of the day today, you're going to have at least an idea of how you're going to introduce your character. So that could be introduce him right away, like, hi, I'm Bob, or like the book, I'm a bad seed. Now, there's lots of different ways that you can introduce them. Like I said, come up here, check out all the other books. And yeah, so this is now independent work time. Go for it.